Mr. Rucker reported to those of you, the four of you there, in the presence of the IG attorney, that they had found this anomaly on Hillary Clinton's emails going through her private server. And when they had done the forensic analysis, they found that her emails, every single one except for four, over 30,000 of them, were going to an address that was not on the distribution list. It was a compartmentalized bit of information that was sending it to an unauthorized source. Do you recall that?
Sir, I don't.
Well, he went on to explain it, and you didn't say anything.
No.
You thanked him, you shook his hand, but the problem was that it was going to an unauthorized source that was a foreign entity unrelated to Russia. And from what you've said here, you did nothing more than nod and shake the man's hand when you didn't seem to be all that concerned about our national integrity of our election when it was involving Hillary Clinton.
Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something?
I don't know.
All right, that was Louis Gohmert and Ed Henry asking Hillary out, did you wipe the server? You mean like with a cloth, Ed? You mean like with a cloth? One of the now infamous answers she gave. Our friends over at the Daily Caller have an amazing story out today. Now, this follows on the heels of a report yesterday that, in fact, only 0.5% of the Hillary emails that were on the Wiener laptop were actually looked at. Some 700,000 were ignored, and it is believed by people within law enforcement that were involved in the case that there was almost 700,000 emails, and they believe the entire missing 33,000 emails would be included in all of that. Now, that's a big deal. Now, it gets taken a step further, which I have been, I think, a lone voice here in saying that why do I imagine not just Putin and the hostile regime of Russia, but probably the Chinese, probably the North Koreans, probably the Iranians, and other nations all hacked into that server. Now, the headline on the Daily Caller is Sources, China hacked Hillary Clinton's private email server. A Chinese-owned company penetrated former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's private server, according to sources briefed on the matter. The company inserted code that forwarded copies of Clinton's emails to the Chinese company in real time. The intelligence community inspector general warned of the problem, but the FBI subsequently failed to act. And Texas Republican, our buddy Louis Gohmert, said all of this and had picked up on this back at that July hearing. Anyway, the Chinese-owned company was operating in D.C. They hacked Hillary's private server, and it raises a lot of questions about, once again, the Espionage Act that she was never charged with because Peter Strzok and James Comey exonerated her before they even did an investigation. That is a crime. And then, of course, the deletions of subpoenaed emails and the deletions of a hard drive and the busting up of devices, well, it might be for nothing. Now, I guess if anybody said, well, I hope the Chinese release the emails, then I guess you'll be considered a puppet of the Chinese. But certainly it appears they have them. Joining us now, Richard Pollack. He is a reporter from the Daily Caller. He's broken this huge story. Also, Scott Ulinger is back with us, retired CIA ops officer, Russian intel operations expert. All right, so
Thank you.
How certain are you of this reporting that the whole thing was hacked?
I'm very certain. Not only do I have multiple sources that I quote in the article, that the Chinese government launched a very sophisticated intelligence operation against Hillary Clinton, and what is most breathtaking to me, and in real time, they were able to intercept her emails, both going incoming as well as outgoing. Since the article has run, I've had actually another intelligence official contact me to confirm the story as well. And this is perhaps one of the greatest national security breaches in the history of this country, in my opinion, because you have to understand, whoever was listening, or in this case, was actually copying. Let me just say one thing. They said, the intelligence sources, that each time an email came in or went out, there was a courtesy copy that was produced especially for the Chinese government. So in real time, within seconds, they're seeing the conversations the secretary is having about negotiations, discussions with heads of state, armament issues, military, tactical and diplomatic issues, all of that within seconds. The Chinese government is reading it in real time. And this is just simply, I think, probably one of the biggest national security scandals of our history.
Well, what I don't understand is I'm sure they never erased one of them. That would mean we could get a hold of all 33,000, right?
They got all 30,000 of them, absolutely. And I think, I don't have any evidence of it, but the people I've been speaking to, the sources believe that they also probably shared some of this intelligence with their allies, North Korea, perhaps with Iran, perhaps with other heads of state and other governments. And we're not saying that this is the only foreign hostile actor or state that penetrated the system. I believe that there were probably other countries that were also sort of listening in as well. But this one is, in fact, confirmed. It's confirmed by multiple sources from the intelligence community.
None of this is a surprise to me, Scott. Does it raise questions about maybe everybody saying it's Russia, Russia, Russia? Could it have been China? Or is it, as I suspect, it was probably Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and probably other hostile nations?
Yeah, Sean, I agree with you. I believe, this bathroom server had no security controls on it, and in fact, it was almost certainly penetrated by multiple actors, the countries you said, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China. There's no doubt about it. But what's really interesting, and I'm really happy that Mr. Pollack wrote this article, is that the time factor. The Inspector General found out about this in early 2015, and they briefed the FBI, including Strzok. But nobody was going to tell Hillary to stop using her private server. And so it continued. The information bleed out continued. And that is absolutely
Is that why when Strzok eventually gets involved in this, that he could have even been implicated himself for not having done the due diligence, knowing a year earlier that, in fact, this was going on?
I think it's absolutely. I mean, it's monstrous that none of these people seem to have done their jobs. And this is what happens when PC outshines actual performance in a government bureaucracy.
But Hillary was not the Secretary of State, though, at that point, though, in 2015.
Right,
she was out running for president.
It would have reflected poorly on her candidacy, exactly. But the fact that it certainly shows that Strzok was in the tank from the beginning with Hillary Clinton and was willing to overlook basically fulfilling his job responsibility. He has a mandate to protect the American people against CI incursions, and he did nothing.
Now, it became a big deal at some point during the campaign when Donald Trump said, Richard Pollack, well, maybe maybe the Russians will share their emails with us. Because there's still, look, the intel community is they're almost universal in their belief that the hackings took place by Russia. And that would be the DNC and Podesta, et cetera. Nobody's ever shown us any evidence to back up that point. And when I interviewed Julian Assange, I specifically asked, did you get this from Russia? He said, no, I did not get it from Russia. Anybody associated with Russia? No. No state party. So, I don't know what to think, except that I think what Scott is saying is dead on accurate, is that there was such a vulnerability, and we now know that our enemies are trying to hack into everything, that it could have been any number of these people, or probably were any number of them.
So Chinese,
certainly they would have shared with one another also. The bad guys the Chinese would have shared it with the Russians, etc.
You think so?
Certainly in ways that would enhance their relationships. I'm sure that they would give each other selected snippets of information of interest. Absolutely.
Why do you think that if they wanted to get to the bottom of it, why didn't they go to WikiLeaks, which did make it public? And by the way, it wasn't just WikiLeaks. So too did the New York Times when they got it, and everybody else reported it. So, why didn't they say, well, where'd you get it? Do you have any evidence of where you got it from? Why wouldn't they ask him?
Look, the major media has decided to ignore the whole question of the vulnerability of the Secretary's communications, including some of the most sensitive secrets that this country has, and they're not interested. It's not in their interest to go and pursue this, and that's what you've been saying for years now. Yes, in 2015, the ICIG did determine that there was anomalies in the emails, and they began to do a real due diligence a thorough search, and then went to the FBI, in which Peter Strzok was in one of several meetings in which they made their presentations. My sources tell me that Strzok just looked at them coldly, in a very hard way. He was indicating he was not interested in this information. He was actually apparently very close to enraged that they should come to him with this kind of information. So Strzok, and you saw it in Strzok's two-way with the Congressman Gohmert. Imagine someone comes to you of great credibility and says that there's a national intelligence operation against the Secretary of State and all of these secrets, and you're the top counterintelligence official at the FBI, which is what Strzok's position was. You would immediately be ringing bells. You would be immediately launching investigations. You would be then bringing other members of the intelligence community in there. He says to our good friend Congressman Gohmert, who had the courage to do this, he said, "I don't recall that conversation."
All right, as we continue, Richard Pollack, reporter, Daily Caller, and Scott Eulinger is with us, retired CIA ops officer, Russian intel ops expert. I have one big question. You know, all of this, if you go back to Assange, when he was young, 16, breaks into the DOD, breaks into NASA, you know, now he's in his mid-40s. At what point does America have to look in the mirror and say that we have not done a good enough job of preventing these type of cyber attacks? We're not protecting our national secrets. At what time do we make it a national security issue so that nobody has the capacity ever to hack into anything in the United States? Scott, to me, that's basic. You know, that you build the sword, you build the shield. We've known now for 40 years that people are hacking into us, and we're not doing anything about it. They keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and when does it become our fault?
That's right. I think we've passed that point. We've passed that point now. It is our fault. I mean, the United States is being bled dry of its secrets, from the Chinese hacking of the Office of Personnel Management to stealing the F-35 designs to what we have in front of us now, to Senator Feinstein's driver who was working for the Chinese. All of these things are swept under the rug. But the real problem is that we are hemorrhaging out secrets at an unprecedented rate, and it must stop.
Let me ask you both this. I mean, from what I understand, and I've done some background and research into this, we have like 250,000 U.S. government IT employees. And I understand that some of these bad actors are really smart and clever, and they're very, very, you know, there's a level of genius and brilliance associated with what they're able to do with computers, but are we saying that we have to throw our hands up and we can't defend against these attacks?
Well, I think one of the issues here is that a considerable number of these folks who have security clearances, some of them are actually foreign nationals under the H-1B program that work for the consulting firms that consult for either the intelligence community or the CIA. I mean, this is an open book at this point. Then this is where Scott is absolutely 100% right. You gentlemen, you were probably old enough to remember the party line on phones. You had a private line or a party line, and party line, you shared it with other people. Well, I think that the...
Okay, I'm not that old. Thank you very much. I do remember a dial rotary phone. That's as far back as you're getting me. Thank you very much.
All right. Nevertheless, Hillary Clinton's server was on a party line. That was not a private line. And but that is only one of the many cybersecurity attacks that this government and our industries have faced.
But aren't we risking sources and methods? Didn't she put lives in jeopardy?
I think that is very possible, just from the sheer volume of information that the Chinese had access to. You know, one thing that, as an ops officer, you sometimes stay awake at night thinking about is if you have one high official say the wrong thing or leaks out a document, it could undo all the work that one well-trained operations officer did maybe for several years. So what we're looking at with this is a similar thing. Her flouting of the law with her junk server, I'm sure it threw away thousands of man-hours of work, of hard-working patriots such as myself. It just made all that work useless. Millions of dollars, and possibly even the lives of some people who may not have been sources of information, but maybe the subject of some of her emails. Different people crusading for human rights in Africa maybe were were eliminated because of her emails, because this stuff should not have been public knowledge.
All right, I want to thank you both for being with us. Richard Pollack, great report with the Daily Caller. We'll continue to follow that up. Scott, thank you so much for being with us. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number.